Good morning, brethren. Welcome to another new day and another daily devotional. We're going to be thinking this morning about the words of the writer of the book of Hebrews in chapter 12. Quite a number of our Let Us passages have been in the book of Hebrews over the past lot of days. And this morning we're thinking of Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1, where the writer says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight." Let us lay aside every weight. The picture that the writer is painting for us here is the arena, sports arena, where races took place. There's a whole grandstand full of spectators. The competitors come in, there's cheering, and they're preparing to run the race that is set before them. One of the things that the competitors did prior to engaging in the race was that they laid aside the outer garments that they wore when they came into the arena. Obviously, back then, when the apostle wrote this letter to the Hebrews, the outer garments that the competitors would have worn would have been their long togas. Now, obviously, you can't run very fast with a toga on you, and so you had to lay that aside. You get something similar in modern day Olympics. The competitors come into the arena and they often have on them their tracksuit, their bottoms and their top. Well, they're not going to compete with those on them. They take off their tracksuit bottoms, they take off their tracksuit top, because that would hinder them, it would slow them down. They get down to the very basics. And so it was in these days, back in the 1st or 2nd century AD. The competitors laid aside anything that would slow them down. And that's what the apostle here is alluding to. He says, in running the Christian race, we are to lay aside every weight. Now, he's not thinking here of anything that is necessarily inherently sinful. He's thinking about things that may be legitimate in themselves, but which have the potential to slow us down. Things that will hold us back in our running the Christian race. The sort of things that he probably has in mind are friendships with those whose influence upon us would actually militate against Christian principles, Christian values, Christian standards. I know when I became a Christian, I was still friendly and met with the guys that I hung about with before I became a Christian. But as time went on, it soon became evident that their way of life was completely different from the Christian way of life. And rather than spending more and more time with them, I found myself spending less and less time with them. Until eventually, in time, those people were no longer part of my life. I had to lay aside such weights because I knew that they would hold me back. The same might be said for a particular hobby in which you engage. Something that is innocent in and of itself, not inherently sinful, but something perhaps to which you give so much time, so much energy, that it's taking away from you living your Christian life. Sometimes there are other things that we need to lay aside. A relationship perhaps with a person of the opposite sex. You've been going out with a fella, you've been going out with a girl, you are quite close, you end up getting saved. That relationship cannot continue. It has to be laid aside. And so there are things in life that we have to leave behind if we are going to run successfully in the Christian life. Take some time and think to yourself, what is there in my life that I need to strip myself of, that I need to lay aside because that particular thing is hindering me in running the Christian race. It's hindering me in my Christian life. It occupies far too much of my time. It gives me, I give to it far too much attention. Something that isn't sinful as such, but something that is definitely a hindrance. The apostle says, let us lay aside every weight and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. Tomorrow, God willing, we look at the next let us that we find here, because he says not only let us lay aside every weight, but also let us lay aside the sin that so easily entangles us. May God help us to take these thoughts and apply them to our Christian lives. Have a good day, brethren.